Hey everybody, Brandon here. This is more of a watch me work kind of a thing. For anybody who knows Photoshop already, it's going to be a lot more useful for you to watch somebody working in Photoshop and see my approach to doing things. So I will show you what I'm up to as I'm putting together this ad. I don't know where this video is going to go because I just thought, hey, maybe somebody else out there would find this useful. So I've got the content that somebody had given me for the ad, and I have the ad size already. So let's look at what I'm up to, what I'm thinking. I'll just talk through it. I'll start over again and show you how I get to this point. We're going to place in an object. We don't want to drag and drop. We want to file place the object. So that is a place linked that I just did there. And I've got my resize on here. I'm going to hold down Shift Alt. That's part of my presets as well. I know I want to put text on the left like you saw in my preview there. I'll do it Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal to get it going the other way. And that'll get me most of the way I want to go. Now we've got a lot of break pattern that I want to fill in. I want to decide how much of the image I really want to see right now. Do I want the pencils in the cup? Do I want the desk? The overall framing. I want to give like a 1/3, 2/3 kind of a thing here. So my guideline might be, 2/3 to the left is going to be mostly text. I know this edge of the table might get in the way. I could also resize the art, but I don't want to mess with the vertical too much. I have to patch in the left end of it. So I will just duplicate that with a Control J. Go ahead and slide this over to the left and move it back with a control bracket. And there we go. It's in the background. It's not going to fill in exactly right, so I'm going to wind up patching it a couple of times. What I want to do right now to patch in this background, we could do like a content aware fill on it. That would also work. That'll be a quick way to do it, but that's not what I did the first time on it, so I'll just repeat what I did. We'll take the upper layer on it, add a mask to it with a gradient set to black to transparent with 100% opacity, and I'll just drag across there. That'll get that portion, so the top left is fine. We could carefully trace these bricks and stuff like that. I'm going to wind up patching in a lot more by the time we're done, so it's really not going to matter. I also want to patch in this bottom section, so I'll make another copy of it. We'll add we'll mask this area and mask that off the same way so that now I've got that bottom left corner is by itself, so I can take the bottommost copy of the art and slide it down. Again, a content aware kind of a fill would probably be a quicker way to do this. But that's fine. I wanted to do it this way. Group that up, so now I've got my background. I know I happen to want to fuzz this off a bit because I've got text that I'm going to throw over top of it that I was given, and I'm not done yet with the fonts and things like that. I'm just getting into the ballpark. However, we cannot add a filter to a group. We have to convert it to a smart object. Smart objects are super awesome in Photoshop because it basically takes all the content that you've got and calls it a single object. So instead of this whole layered up situation, I can do a right click on it. We're going to convert to smart object. Now it thinks of it as a single piece of art. Okay, cool thing is I can now apply filters to this, like filter blur, Gaussian blur to the whole thing. Lens blur is another way to go about it. So we'll take a Gaussian blur, drop it to about, I don't know, something like that. That's why I said it didn't matter too much how I filled in those bricks, because I want to make them soft anyway. So bam. I'm going to paint onto the mask in a second, onto the filter itself. But first I'm going to show you the smart object. We'll click on it, bang, double click, and you'll see that I've still got my original art, my original layers, everything is in here. I can ungroup it because I don't need it. There's my bottom left corner patching in. Here's my upper left corner patching in. Here's my right side patching in. What we've got here is a bunch of linked art. The cool thing about this is the reason I said to do file, place, linked. File, place, linked. The reason we're doing that is because we're not actually copy pasting pixels. We can resize this all day long and we won't lose resolution. So you really want to use linked art. You do not want to rasterize your art unless you really have to, as kind of a last effort, the last thing you want to do. Right now I've got all of these elements are still linked and they're linked into a smart object. So on the smart object I can treat it a little bit more like a single piece of artwork, so I can add smart filters to it. I'm not messing with the underlying pixels. This is non-destructive workflow is what we're doing. So that's got to be your goal as a graphic artist, is to get to non-destructive editing, okay? And steps like this are the way that you do it. So I'm going to click onto the smart filter, that white little square right there, and we're going to use my gradient tool. I could paint it with a brush over here as well, but we're fine. That's all right. We'll drag it out a little bit more. If you don't have a pen tool, one thing I do a lot of times is I'll grab the radial gradient and just drop the opacity down, and then I'll use this just to go boom, 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 boom. Okay, so right now I'm just painting out. With a gradient tool, I can go to white and we can increase that blurriness. So what I'm doing is deciding what's blurry or not. So when I'm painting black onto this area, it's going to be not blurry, because what I'm really doing is I'm painting onto the filter mask itself. Okay, so no artwork, I'm actually painting onto the mask. Cool thing about using a linked object and a smart object like this with these smart filters is that you can still go back and make changes to the way that you set it up in the first place. So you can see how blurry it is. I can kick that way up and you can see it real-time updating over here, right? So you can see the area that I've wound up painting on with my radial gradient tool. Radial gradient tool. So as a matter of fact, if I wanted to, I could have this whole thing just fade out to white entirely, which is not, I don't think I want to do that. I want to keep the brick pattern in effect, but you could, just grab white gradient and do like that. I find that to be kind of cheap, and I don't like doing that. If you were to paint onto it like that, the least you could do is put it into a blending mode like screen or overlay or something. And then drop it back, or just keep it in normal blending mode and drop it back. Just let it lighten the background. Don't just smudge over the entire thing. Thank you so much, Adobe, for your constant updates. Where would I be without you? Right, getting my work done. But I don't really need that in this case. I do like the brick pattern, but I think just softening it out a bit with that blur is going to be enough to make my text stand out. The other thing you don't want to get into is just cheap tricks like we're going to just throw on, a drop shadow on everything. You want to make sure that your text is still readable. And I break my text up into pieces. I'm not done with this information yet. It's probably too much info, so I'm going to drop it back. But a lot of times, if you have too much of a complicated background, people will just say, "Oh, I'm going to throw a drop shadow on there." Don't do that. That's not cool. Don't just throw drop shadows onto everything. Make sure that it can be read, it can be seen, it makes sense. If you're not sure, another great thing to do is to throw on a new effect onto the whole thing, an adjustment layer, and do a black and white adjustment layer. Okay, so now the whole thing should have good contrast with or without color. And you can see, like down here, some of my text gets onto the table, so I'm going to have to adjust, where the text will flow to. What I always do is I will break up the I will break up the major parts of my text into pieces. And the reason I do that is so that I can move them all around independent of one another, like this. Anytime I try to put all my text into one text block, I wind up breaking it all up because I kind of goof up as I go along. So I've learned after having to do that a zillion times that it's just best to break your major blocks of text up into their own pieces. The other thing is I could just take this and resize it, by itself, however big I want it to go. I'll wind up picking out some different fonts and layouts and adding some more little bits to the side of it to kind of help the text stand out. Sometimes what I'll do is throw on something like this kind of thing. Every now and again I'll do that just to make the time and date stand out. I'll just throw that over to where the information for the dates are going to go, or I might indent the whole thing over a bit. Or you could break up your text with a block behind it. Part of graphic design is to make yourself space to work on. So what I've done here is that I've created space to work on at the very beginning. With the 2/3 to the left is my layout space, 1/3 to the right is the art space. So I'm creating space for myself to work with. Okay, that is enough information in this one. That is just a watch me work in Photoshop kind of a thing and putting together an ad. I hope you enjoyed this video. Talk to you later.